There's a myth going round town that when you get older you just sit down and start rocking. Just rocking. In a way that's true, if you know what I mean. Just take a look at the senior scene. Well, it's rocking.
All right. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I appreciate y'all coming. I'm George Wilson, Deputy of the Orange County Sheriff's Office. I've been in law enforcement for right around 15 years now. I've done everything from patrol to writing traffic tickets to child abuse investigations, rape cases, murder, drug cases. Right now I'm assigned to the School Resource Officer Division. I'm at A.L. Stanback Middle School. I also help do some internet crimes and some other things too. I also teach DARE at New Hope Elementary. A lot of people ask me, how did I get into these types of crimes? Because they are so specialized, and a lot of people are like, I just couldn't do that every day. I had a case one time where a little girl was groomed by a gentleman who was in his mid-30s, and she was a middle school student, and he groomed her. And when I got a copy of the text messages from her phone through the app she was using, and her parents did everything right. She didn't have a cell phone, but she had an iPod. They didn't realize that iPods had apps through the internet to where her phone could become, or her iPod could become a phone basically. She could call people, they could call her. She could text them, they could text her. Her parents just thought they got it for her to listen to music on. They had no idea that she could download apps and switch the use of that device. And I saw the grooming pattern of a grown man grooming a child. And he convinced her to let him come to her house and go to his house. And then he actually signed her out of school one day and took off with her. And luckily we were able to find her. He got charged. And also through that investigation, I saw how other people actually helped him groom her, and it really bothered me a lot. Not only was he able to get access to a child so easily, that other people were actually involved in this and helped him. It really bothered me. So through that case, I became more interested in finding out about these types of crimes. And so I really started doing some research because I felt like as an investigator, I wasn't up to speed enough. And I can't help my victims if I don't even understand what I'm looking at. So I took it upon myself to do the research and get more educated about these types of crimes. And through that, I became very passionate about these types of crimes because they are so hard and they fly under the radar of most people. It's all around us and we don't even realize it. A lot of people don't even know what to look for. So that's one reason why I like to go talk to people, is because if I can help one person recognize the signs of human trafficking or maybe a child being groomed or lured, then that's a win for everybody in my opinion. I want to make sure that we're all on the same page because of movies and music and where we grew up and who our friends are and what influences us. We all have different definitions of human trafficking. I may give you a definition today, and another professional tomorrow in another part of the country is going to have a completely different definition of what human trafficking is. And it's kind of hard for us to talk about it if we're not even on the same page. So what I did is I got some general statutes. They're kind of wordy and they're boring, but that's the definition we're going to go off of because that's what we have to work off of as law enforcement in the state of North Carolina. What is human trafficking? North Carolina General Statute 1443:11, human trafficking. A person commits the offense of human trafficking when that person knowingly or recklessly disregard of the consequences of the action recruits, entices, harbors, transports, provides, or obtains by any means another person with the intent that the other person be held in involuntary servitude or sexual servitude, or willfully or in reckless disregard of the consequences of the action causes a minor to be held in involuntary servitude or sexual servitude. I know that's a really weird definition. So we'll come back to it. So a lot of people, as soon as I read that, the next question is, what is sexual servitude and involuntary servitude? So let's go over that real quick. Sexual servitude, a person commits the offense of sexual servitude when that person knowingly or in reckless disregard of the consequences of the actions subjects or maintains another in sexual servitude. So they kind of use the word as the definition. What that means is, let's say you make a girl, you tell her, hey, you've got to go earn this much money this week. And you find a way to kind of have influence over her to where she's working for you, that's what that is. It's basically what the street calls your pimp. Okay? Involuntary servitude, a person commits the offense of involuntary servitude when that person knowingly and willfully or in reckless disregard of the consequences of the action holds another person in involuntary servitude. Meaning, that's your housemates. That's a big issue. We see a lot of it throughout the country. People will be brought over by smugglers and human traffickers. They take their passports, they hold their papers, and they say, okay, it cost me $20,000 to get you over here. That's how much you've got to make to pay me back. And so then they hire them out as nannies and maids. When that person comes back with their earnings for that week, or the person in charge of them gets paid by whoever has hired them, and that person's thinking, okay, this is how much they're getting charged, this is how much I'm making. Well, then the person subtracts out, well, I gave you housing. I bought your food. The shoes you're wearing, who bought them? I bought them. So you think you just made $1,200 that week. Let's say, I don't know if that would be a good example, but they subtract out how much they charge you for your housing, a couple $100 there. They're going to subtract out your food, and then they're going to say, well, you live in the house and you use electricity. So I'm subtracting this out for your electricity, for your water, your clothing. And once you start going through all those things that they substitute out, now you went from making $1,200 that week to maybe making $400. And then let's say Christmas rolls around and they get you presents, or they allow you a day off, where let's say whoever hired you goes on a Christmas vacation and you don't work that week. Well, they're going to subtract that out and break it up over several weeks. So these people think, okay, I can pay this off in 6 months to a year, 5 years later. Somehow they're still not paid off this debt. And they're still working for this person who's holding their passports and their papers and their cell phone and all that. So even if you do escape or get away, what are you going to do? A lot of times you don't know the language. If you come across someone, you don't know the language, you don't know how to communicate what's going on. A lot of times they come from countries where they don't like law enforcement and they don't trust law enforcement. A lot of times law enforcement's on the tape with negative influences in their home countries, so they don't want to come to us. So now they really are stuck in their own minds. They may not be physically, but mentally they're stuck there. So those are the three big definitions. If we go back to human trafficking, I tell people this. Human trafficking is just using another individual to make money. You can do it in a variety of ways. You can do it with adults, you can do it with children. You can sell them for sex, you can sell them for services, you can sell them for goods. You can get them to do what I call your dirty work in other areas. I've seen people take 5th graders and use them as drug runners. So we got human trafficking. You're using that kid to move dope for you, and you're making money off that kid doing it. That kid's not getting anything in return, really. You may go buy that 5th grader a nice pair of Air Jordans that they really want. To them, you just bought them $200 shoes. What they don't realize is they just made a drug dealer like $5 grand. They're getting $100. The United States is one of the largest producers and consumers of child pornography. As I told you, we're going to intertwine child pornography and human trafficking because, in my opinion, they go hand in hand. You cannot separate them. By far, the United States is without question one of the largest producers and consumers of child pornography in the world. Pornography is a $13 billion a year industry, and traffickers make more money when selling children for sex. 73% of human trafficking cases in the United States are sexual exploitation. The other percentage are the forced laborers, as far as nannies, maids, things like that. We've seen stuff with lawn crews. Also in North Carolina, matter of fact, a while back, one of the chicken plants down on the eastern part of the state, they're huge down there. When I lived at the beach, it blew my mind how big some of them. You're talking some of those places have upwards of 2,000 to 3,000 people working in a day at the processing plants. Well, I can tell you right now, with as rural as some of those counties are, there's not a workforce there to fill it. How do they fill it? Through visa programs. One company had sponsored 1,400 workers to come to their plant to work, to a visa program. I promise you, that company did not know 1,400 people in foreign countries that magically wanted to come work for their company. And so the state did some investigation, and sure enough, they found people who had been trafficked and forced to come there. It's basically like subcontract labor. They came and said, hey, I have 40 guys that can work at your plant. This is what we'll take. So that's kind of how it works, but most of it's going to be your sexual exploitation of children and women. We are seeing a big uptick in transgender males and boys. That seems to be on the rise now. An estimated 100,000, 300,000 children are being trafficked in the United States right now. So there's a list of known child pornography out there. If someone sends or receives a known image, it's going to flag, whether you're using Spectrum, Charter, AOL, your Verizon phone. They have to monitor for this. As soon as that information is flagged in the system, we get what's called a cyber tip sent to DC. National Center for Missing and Exploited Children take that tip, get the information from it, see where it happened. Where's the person who sent it? Where's the person who received it? And they send that information to the ICAC task force in that state that I was telling you guys about earlier. And then it comes, so in North Carolina, it's going to come to the State Bureau of Investigations, the SBI. They are going to filter that tip. They're going to pull it up and look at it and say, okay, the person who sent it lives in Greensboro. The person who received it lived in Hillsboro. So either Guilford County or Greensboro Police Department is going to get notified, and then Orange County Sheriff's Office in Hillsboro will get notified. And then we work on the tip that way. So part of the reason why this is such a big business and so hard, evolving technology. Human trafficking is a technology-based crime. The days of streetwalkers, when you see in movies that girls are walking under the red light district and they're out on the street, that's gone. You're not even going to see that in places like Dallas and Houston and Charlotte anymore. It is too risky. Law enforcement is going to drive up on you, they're going to write you a ticket, they're going to arrest you, then you run the risk of your phone being taken and that's done. Way too risky. With cell phones are computers now. People don't realize there's more technology in cell phones today than what there was the first space shuttle up. We hold more power in our hand now than what they had to go to the moon. Apps today, as I was telling you about the case earlier, the parents had no clue that through the Apple Store, their daughter could download an application and make her iPod work as a phone. She could open herself up to anyone in the world through that app to talk to them. She could get a telephone number assigned to her iPod that she could give out to her friends for them to call her at night and text her at any time. Mobile banking. So before, you see someone on the street corner changing money, girl leaning in the window like the movies always show, telltale sign. I can pay you right now from my cell phone. There's probably 40 different apps out there where I can switch money to your account in less than 5 minutes. You can now pay your friends through Facebook.
What did you say?
Through Facebook Messenger. You can actually pay your friends through Facebook Messenger now. Yeah. And Facebook is working on their own digital currency. So that's the other part. Digital currency, Bitcoins, that's another way that people will trade money now. It's basically an online currency versus cash currency. So where's recruiting happening? Earlier we were talking about how do people find children? Recruiting, grooming is another way to put it. The internet. Why will it's huge. There's no internet police. Video chat, video game chat. That is becoming bigger and bigger. As video games become more popular, you can buy a game. If you see your child on a game and you see it's MA and you say no, that content is not appropriate for you. But you go buy them, say Madden football. That's E for everyone. It's a football game. The problem is you can control the content that they see in the game. You cannot control the content of the other players when they're talking. There's no filter to say you can't hear this word. You have no control of what that person is saying to your child in those chats. So that's where it becomes a real challenge. Call of Duty, all these other games that are multiplayer games, they're playing with 40, 50 people sometimes. Fortnite, depending on what kind of rounds they do and stuff, you're talking hundreds of people playing at the same time. And then they become friends with people because, hey, you're really good at Modern Warfare. I want you on my team next time so we can get more points. Well, they just friended someone, they have no clue who they are. They know their voice and they know their character on the game. And 2-3 months they're playing together online every day, they become comfortable with that person. They have no clue who they are, they don't know what they look like, they don't know where they're from, but they let that guard down. And that's the window they're looking for. So when you think about libraries and streets and parks, kids with free time, where do they go? They go to the park and hang out with their friends. They walk up and down the street. They go to libraries. A lot of kids, when I first started with this, and I saw some other presentations that said libraries, it's like, you don't go to a library anymore. You can get books offline, download them. Most, like the library at my school, there's not many books anymore in there. There's just not.
Public libraries are pretty popular.
Right. But what I found out was they go there for the free internet.
Yeah, that's true.
The internet's free. So these are some apps. Now some of these apps, I cannot keep you up to date with the most recent apps because they change as we talk.
And can you print out a copy?
Yes, so I'll show you some websites in a little while that actually you can log on and they update the new popular apps. So on here, all these apps are things that kids have or do use. Some of these apps from the time this was made until now is no longer in service. As I told you, TikTok's on here. That's one I told you about earlier. We thought it was being shut down. There's news articles that's getting shut down. 4 days later, hey, it's still going to be here. So as you see Snapchat, people don't realize Snapchat now has a default method to where it gives your location out to your Snapchat friends. It will tell them exactly where you're at. If you do not go in there and turn that off, all your friends and followers on Snapchat, if they have it turned on too, can see where you're at. And kids don't realize that.
Do parents use that to know where the kid is at?
I don't know one parent that uses Snapchat to keep up with their kids.
Okay.
But we have dealt with bad guys who have accounts that look like teenagers who use that to see where that person's at and try to figure out who they are and where they're
But you
at.
can't use Snapchat to keep up with the kid.
It's not,
Doesn't sound like you should.
it only works when you're both on, so I wouldn't recommend it. Yeah.
There
There's
is-
much better
There is a
apps.
little device that my son bought, put on the list of my grandson, 9-year-old. He doesn't know that the device has some GPS thing, so when he calls in for his check-in, by cell phone,
Right.
if he says I'm at so-and-so's house, his dad knows that that's not his location.
So,
The kid doesn't know that, but he's 9 years old.
so Verizon's
But,
got to watch out.
nine-year-olds can have a lot of fibbing going on.
Oh, yeah.
When they want to be with their friends. And they know that daddy doesn't approve of so-and-so.
Exactly. So what she's talking about is Verizon's going to come in, if they have a watch out. It's like a cell phone. You can text and you can do pre-designated text back, and you can limit who can text that number and who can call it. And they can't call anyone but the people you put on that list. And it's like an Apple Watch almost, and they can sit there and talk on it. I used it for my kids, so even if they were at school on a field trip, I could log on and hit find them, and it would show me where that watch was at. So if my kid was at baseball practice or something, I could hit find it, and I could make sure they were on the field if I ran some errands.
What's the name of it?
I don't remember the name of the watch.
Did you say it's a Verizon?
I know Verizon has it.
Verizon.
I'm sure other companies have it. I'm just familiar with the Verizon version of it. Another one I like to point out to people, kids or your grandkids, the calculator app. This is how sneaky they get. You look at their phone, it looks like a calculator app. And it works just like a calculator. But they can put in a series of numbers and functions like 1 + 1 divided by 4. If that's the pre-programmed sequence that needs to go into this app, it unlocks a vault. And then you can keep pictures and videos and other things in that vault. So when you open the phone to check your kid's phone, it's like, oh, you have a calculator app. And what's it for? To do my homework. Oh, I'm so glad you're doing your homework. That's awesome. The whole time the kid's thinking, you only knew. And we've recovered phones that had thousands of pictures in the calculator app. And just looking at it, you never know. So when we tell people to keep up with your kids, it's not as simple as just looking at the phone.
You can't.
Right.
I want that website.
Okay, we'll get to it in a minute. All these apps are good to get familiar with. There's a website I'm going to tell you about in a little while that will help you get familiar with these. Get educated on what kids do. This is really important. So here's the website I was telling you about earlier. It's called Netsmartz. So Netsmartz. Netsmartz has special spots for grandparents, parents, teenagers, and children. They have multiple things that are age appropriate. They will have handouts and slides for you to look at as an adult and give you ideas on how you can talk and relate to younger people about social media and what they're doing on there and how to be safe. So the Blue campaign, run by the United States Department of Homeland Security, it's actually a really good website. They have some excellent flyers you can download and read, print out, and they do have some of the acronyms and other things like that. I was very impressed with their website. It had great information. Some people don't think about going to the Department of Homeland Security, but human trafficking comes across the border. They did a DNA test. They sampled a certain amount of people coming across the border a couple of years ago who had children with them. 1/3 of the people that came with children, their DNA did not match in any way, and they could not explain how they had that child with them. 1/3 of the sample group they did. 1/3. Next, Operation Underground Railroad. They are an organization that is a private organization. They do outstanding work. They rescue children all over the world. Their website has got great information. It's got a lot of information you may not be interested in about what they do, but it's got great resources and examples and videos that you can watch to get educated on what's going on today. They are active as we are speaking, rescuing children all over this world. Next is North Carolina Human Trafficking Commission. They have a website. North Carolina is one of the only states that has a commission that is legislative. It is by statute that this commission is supposed to be in existence. Their goal is to bridge the gap between the public and law enforcement and victims. Their sole goal is to educate the general public on how to look for this problem. Kids can stop a chat. This is actually a true chat that was shut down by a child and reported to authorities. And a lot of apps like Facebook, let's say someone does send you an inappropriate text like this. It says, want to trade like news, I'll go first. The child can actually report that through Facebook to Facebook, and then they will report it to us. And every person who has messaging apps, 90% of the apps are going to have this feature in them. Teach your grandchildren, teach your children about this feature. They may not ever tell you they made that report, but they know in their gut this is not right. They may not come to you and want to admit that they had an inappropriate conversation, but they can still report it. And that's really big to me because children don't want to admit always when they've done something wrong for fear of being punished. I get it. That's human nature. But if they report it, that's awesome because now I know about a predator. This is another one right here. I tell all the kids, you can go on here. Let's say you send a picture to someone and you regret it the next day. But you don't want to go to mom and dad and say, hey, so I was talking to this guy yesterday and he asked for some pictures and I sent them. Mom and dad's going to blow up. Phone's going to get taken for months on end. It's probably going to be bad. And they know it. And so I tell kids, make that report. Let us know you sent that picture. Let us help try to fix this problem. If I know they sent it to someone, I can try to track down who they sent it to and get those devices and delete those images off those devices. Hopefully I can see if they saved it somewhere, if they backed it up somewhere. I can't always get rid of everything, but I can try my hardest. My goal is to get rid of those images. Law enforcement, we want to help children get rid of their children. They're going to make bad decisions. We all make bad decisions as kids. If I got judged off the bad decisions I made as a kid, so I tell them, you don't have to go to mom and dad, but you can do something about it. And you have that ability, and you have that right to do it. And so I'll always tell them about this website, Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They go in there, they can put the telephone number they sent it to, the messaging app they use, all that stuff. They can put that information in there.
Well, thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming. I appreciate it.
paid our dues all those years, and it's so nice to be switching gears. It's a grand new century, and it's the senior life, the senior life, the senior life for me.